Pedro Reyes is a modern Mexican artist. He was born in 1972 in Mexico City, and he attended the Ibero-American University, learning the art of architecture and its histories. But instead, he found his passion in sculptures. And from 1996 to 2002, he worked on Torre de los Vientos. And he taught a course in the reverse engineering of warfare, challenging techno-optimism and re-imaging the defense sector in opera for the end of times at MIT's Art, Culture, and Technology program. He also won the U.S. State Department Medal for the Arts and named a Ford Foundation Art of Change Fellow in 2015. Reyes doesn't care much about the standard classical methods and techniques of creating sculptures. Instead, he would prefer to use other materials to get his points across. He was kind of idealistic. He actively pursued anti-violence and called out injustice in his works. So his works tended to be more heavily engaged in social, economical, environmental, and political concerns of both the Mexico and the USA. So generally his works tend to be idealistic fantasies blended with interactive play from the audience. And in one of the videos he says, "The purpose of art is to come up with ways to transform the most negative instincts into creative instincts." And he doesn't care much about the abstract portion of his works. He cares more about the formal aspects. So, in sculpture, he says that form is meaning. If form is meaning, that it's a liberating thing. Perhaps one of his most important works comes from Palas por Pistolas, and Disarm. And so he participated in Palas por Pistolas, which translates to Shovels for Guns. And it was this project in 2007, and it took place in Culiacan, which is a city known for its violence. People basically donated their weapons for appliances and other needed goods. And so these donated guns were basically melted down and created into shovels. So after the event, basically his friend in the National Crime Prevention Commission told him that there would be another massive destruction of weapons in Ciudad Juarez. And these weapons were basically caught from criminal organizations. And so they were shipped to Mexico City and they were dismantled. And so Reyes basically came up with this concept that he would take these weapons and he would make them into musical instruments. And he created this exhibition called Disarm. And so basically the exhibition Disarm it's a blend basically of music, sculptures, and technology. But of course, Pedro Reyes had other well-known works. For example, there was the exhibition called Versus Machina. It was basically about humans overcoming technology, and he was inspired by another work called from Guillaume Bologna. And another one was called Sanatorium. It was basically a clinic with therapies that would help with stress, depression, etc. And methods such as hypnotism and psychodrama were used to resolve the inner conflicts for the patients, which in this case were the audience members. It was designed to explore the inner social and economical functions of society, and the fact that it lacked professionals was there to challenge the concept of professional hierarchy. Another famous work is Democracy. It happened a little bit before the US election. It was basically a horror house-style exhibition used to portray the modern-day political issues, such as gun statements and abortion. And so Reyes basically used sculptures and performances and active role play to create this environment where groups would go through each room, and each room would basically have a new theme. And so you can see from this slide that one of the rooms had coffins that were made up of sweets, and that's supposed to represent the American diabetic problem.
Pedro Reyes is a Mexican artist and focuses on making creative and fun solutions to problems in the world. Throughout this course, themes such as violence against others and social inequalities have been consistent, whether it is through extreme hate groups like the KKK or by explicitly disregarding the contributions and hard work of the working class. This course has shown that there is still racial and social disparity in the world. However, Reyes uses his artwork to challenge the thought processes of his audience, to encourage them to act differently. Much of Reyes' artwork utilizes audience interaction. and there is no better way to help change or encourage people than showing them how ridiculous or backwards their thinking is. Reyes hopes that his art might bring about solutions to some of the problems in this world by criticizing them and bringing them into a new light.
Analytic model of disarm. Disarm is a sculpture made of remnants of weapons that the Mexican army had collected and destroyed. Each piece functions as a musical instrument that are programmed and operated via a computer. Reaction. My first reaction was completely chaotic. I couldn't exactly tell what I was seeing. Upon closer inspection, I realized how intricate and creative the medium was, using gun parts to create musical instruments. I felt very impressed by how creative Reyes was with this art piece. He was able to combine two very different themes, guns of violence with peaceful musical instruments. He made me think of the past violence in Mexico's history. Description. We can see a hi-hat made out of barrels of assault rifles and a revolver, as well as other instruments made out of handguns. These machines are mechanical musical instruments made from very deadly weapons. Reyes wanted to recreate guns and their purpose that no one else could think of. He used welding as his main tool for creating this art piece, welding together guns and other metal parts. Description continued. The artwork created almost a dark and gloomy mood. I believe the artist created this mood to showcase the dark connotations that rifles, handguns, shotguns, and any other weapons have throughout history. Each of the instruments can be seen spaced out evenly and plugged near a speaker. Interpretation. I believe Reyes is trying to send the message that violence can no longer be tolerated and accepted as the norm, but to instead reclaim it into something more friendly and peaceful. Disarm sends out a pacifist message to its viewers to avoid violence and therefore disarm their weapons so there will be no more fighting. He shows visual imagery of disassembled guns being turned into instruments. Overall, he wants his community to join in on pacifist ideas and create a safe environment for the future. Evaluation. Reyes did an incredible creative job in conveying his pacifist message. His work is highly expressive in conveying his message with a really realistic style. Each weapon was carefully welded to form a bigger, better object. The art uses a very dark and bleak color to convey the dangers of weapons, but also created broad instruments like drums, keyboards, and a harp to showcase his message. His message conveys that current times with things like gang violence and war in the modern world. Motivation to choose certain artwork. Disarm. We chose this artwork for multiple reasons. We thought it was one of his most influential and notorious art pieces. It also showcases how creative he is and his ideas for a better society. And we also find it very appealing to the younger community and for the modern age. People's United Nation, or PUN, showcases the humorous and political side of Reyes. He is able to show his views on the UN and essentially call them a joke, and that it doesn't represent the people. This artwork shows that he cares about the people and the well-being of the community. The grasshopper plus cuerpo mático. Cuerpo mático is a physical interactive art piece that reminds the viewers of the past. That's why we chose it. As for the grasshopper, it's a pretty clever pun piece that Reyes made to solve the world hunger crisis by eating grasshoppers.
In an article made by Art21 about him, Pedro Reyes expresses that his approach to art is to create playful solutions to social problems. And that can be seen in many of his projects. For example, when he created musical instruments using guns, when he created the People's United Nations, And when he created a video of Karl Marx and Adam Smith fighting over a cookie to illustrate complex economic ideas. Throughout the interview, Pedro says many quotes that can be put together to illustrate how he views art and how he starts his process. One quote is, "Anything can become material for art." The artist said this quote when he was talking about the project of turning guns into musical instruments. And he says that to illustrate that as a multimedia artist, he can get any media and change the perspective people have of it, or an object, or an element, or an issue, and flip it on its head to create something new. And in this case, he took something that's considered a social issue, which is guns in Mexico, and turns it into something joyful, something that brings joy and happiness to people. Another quote he says during the interview is, "In architecture school, you learn to solve problems." So I think that stuck to me, the issue to solve problems. It's hard for me to think just art for art's sake. Now, that's very crucial to understand the artist's motive. In architecture school, he learned to solve problems, and when he became an artist, that stuck to him and influenced him into making art with a purpose and with the goal of solving a social issue and helping a community. And the last quote is, "For me, every year I need to move to a different planet." This quote is very deep and illustrates how the artist immerses himself in research and meets people and immerses himself in the issue and works with different media to create something new every year. And he just becomes so invested in the issue that he moves, quotes, to a different planet. And I believe that understanding these quotes and understanding the artist's work is very crucial in understanding why he does art the way he does.